As you know, we held negotiations today, or rather yesterday and today, with representatives of the OSCE leadership, the Foreign Minister of Switzerland Ignazio Cassis, which is the chairing country in the Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe, and with the Secretary General of the OSCE, Mr. Feridun Sinirlioglu. We regularly, quite frequently communicate with our Swiss colleagues. The previous contact took place last September on the sidelines of the 80th session of the General Assembly. Already then, Mr. Cassis informed us that due to Switzerland's election as the chair in 2026, he wanted to visit Moscow. Of course, we supported this intention. The discussions yesterday and today were candid. The Swiss colleagues, especially the ones from the Secretariat, understand the challenges they will face, given the deep crisis in the OSCE. The causes of the crisis are well known, but we nonetheless discuss them further, responding to some inquiries from our interlocutors. The organization is being weakened by the discussions on topics that should be annually considered, introducing issues that do not fall within its competence, merely to point out another Ukrainian issue and report to those who steer this process. At the core of the OSCE lies the principle of the indivisibility of security, the principle of equal and indivisible security, which has been proclaimed multiple times at the highest level within the OSCE, including at the summit in Istanbul in 1999 and the summit in Astana in 2010. It is clearly stated in these documents that security is indivisible, and no one has the right to strengthen their security at the expense of other security. Furthermore, a particularly significant, concrete task is emphasized. No country, group of countries, or organization has the right to claim dominance within the OSCE space. But what NATO is doing is exactly what is prohibited. Seeking not just to dominate but to include more and more members, is well known. We do not want NATO to manage the security of the whole Eurasian continent. Yet, such a goal has been proclaimed by NATO. Together with the People's Republic of China and other members of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, BRICS, we are advocating for the defense of the principle of the indivisibility of security. We are ready, of course, to also hold discussions on this topic with our American colleagues, once their general attitude towards key aspects of what is known as strategic stability becomes clear. As you know, the New START Treaty expired yesterday, creating a vacuum. Our position has been elaborated in detail in a special statement announced by our ministry. We will base our actions on the principle that Russia is prepared for any development of events. We, of course, prefer dialogue and will await to see to what extent the United States will be ready for the same. Overall, the conversation about the role of the OSCE in resolving security issues, in forming a new security architecture, was quite interesting. Our interlocutors acknowledge that without the Asian aspect, our pan-continental efforts will, of course, be insufficient. But how exactly this will unfold remains to be seen. Across all three OSCE activity spheres, military, political, economic, humanitarian, there is either complete stagnation or, as I said at the beginning of my opening remarks, a Ukrainization. Meanwhile, the OSCE is completely inactive. Despite having institutes of special representatives responsible for the rights of national minorities, freedom of the media, and human rights, these institutes completely prove their failure. Our colleagues, particularly Secretary General Sinirlioglu, actively supported our assertion that it is unacceptable for a structure calling itself an organization not to have a charter. And all the institutes formed within this organization operate without any universally approved rules. And this is despite the proclaimed principle of consensus in the OSCE. There needs to be order in this organization, especially concerning election monitoring. There is an indecent situation where in some so-called developed democracies, 10 observers are sent, while in a country located east of Vienna, as they say, hundreds upon hundreds are sent. I note the disgrace that the Bureau for Democratic Institutions and Human Rights brought upon itself when observing the events in Romania in the first round of elections, where, as you know, the leading candidate was simply removed from the race after that round with full silence from the OSCE. About a year ago, at the end of March last year, President Trump, in a telephone conversation with President Putin, proposed considering a month-long energy truce, where both sides of the conflict would not attack energy infrastructure. President Putin immediately agreed in the same conversation, and we announced this truce, and for a month did not touch Ukraine's energy facilities. Ukraine, in turn, remained silent about Washington's proposal, and during that month, over 130 attacks on Russian energy facilities were registered. We still adhere to these rules. We only target those facilities that have dual purposes or purely military significance. Therefore, when everything is forgiven to Ukraine, and all the sins are attributed to the Russian Federation, nonetheless, the media should work honestly and strive to uphold the integrity of their profession. Nobody showed this to us. Maybe our delegation, which went to Abu Dhabi for the second time, was informed about what was discussed there. I have not yet had the opportunity to communicate with them. Yesterday we were already engaged with Swiss colleagues in negotiations, and today in the morning. But what leaks into the press, and what is even directly stated by NATO Secretary-General Mark Rutte, speaking in Ukraine's Verkhovna Rada, indicates that an intervention is being prepared. He said that security guarantees include automatic actions by a coalition of the willing, independently at one stage, and with US support at another stage, and that Britain and France are ready to deploy their troops on Ukrainian territory. This is the exact opposite of the collective guarantees agreed upon by us and the Ukrainians in April 2022. Back then it was honest, but now these are security guarantees for the regime that the West wants to preserve at all costs, just to continue attempts to bite at the Russian Federation.
$25 करोड़ गरीब गरीबी को परास्त करके बाहर निकले।
For the good of our nation, let's work together and let's truly make America great again.
The fastest news breaks.
Requested PM saying that look, you will have to speak to Putin and to Zelensky.
The biggest news makers.
The relationship with India is probably the most important bilateral relationship the U.S. will have for the rest of this century.
The capital delivered quite an election result today.
Expert analysis.
The million-dollar question today is how to stop this dance of death.
Ground reports.
I'm standing at the crossroad of the Kumbh Mela. Behind me are more than 100 entry guards.
Long-form interviews.
Exclusionary politics is reflected in Manipur case as well. You don't bother because this is a small state.
Deep dive into burning issues.
It's often said DRC could be the richest country in the whole world. It's because of what sits underneath.
Why exactly did the US topple the Sheikh Hasina government?
HT videos. We don't just break news, we break it down.